Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good night, wherever you are in the world. So thank you again for joining us today for another Vectric Live on YouTube. So we're going live from a very kind of cloudy, the sun's trying to come out, UK from my craft room. And today's session, we're going to look at it's mostly like a tips and tricks session. So we're going to be exploring lots of different ways that we can create 3D in VCarve. So we're really just going to kind of push the boundaries of what we're able to do in VCarve in terms of 3D. So we're going to be looking at all sorts of things, from importing 3D data. We'll look at the 3D models that you get with VCarve as well. We'll look at how we can create some really unique assemblies with those using some assembly techniques such as level clipping and the mirror mode as well. On top of that, so the 3D model stuff aside, we're going to be looking at various machining strategies as well. Where we can look at how we can use the fluting toolpath or the molding toolpath, for instance, to create 3D parts. Now, I've created this presentation as part of last year's user group meeting that we held both in the UK and the USA. And so when we do these events, what we tend to do is we pre-record the video and then we bung it all on a USB. So when we go over to the user group event, we perform live, do the live presentation, but the users that get to go to these shows get to have all the presentations on a USB stick so they can watch back to them. And today we're making this presentation, which was a part of the user group last year. We're making that available for the rest of the community. So it's going to be a little bit of a strange setup. So I'm here live, right from my room. I'm going to be live in the chat as well, but we are watching a video that was pre-recorded. So if you do have any questions, then please put them out there and I'll be on hand to answer those. And then what we're going to do is we'll play the video and then I'll come back in at the end. So I hope you enjoy this session and I hope you learn lots. So here goes. In this demonstration, we'll be looking at many ways of creating 3D in VCarve. We'll be demonstrating many different methods in the software, from looking at importing 3D data and how we can alter it, to looking at toolpath strategies that enable us to machine 3D parts. So generally, when we think of 3D, we think of Aspire. So let's have a look at the differences between the two products where 3D is concerned. So you can see and are probably already aware that VCarve doesn't have 3D modelling and editing tools that Aspire has, along with the ability to create lithophane. So what can we do in VCarve to create finished 3D parts? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. So first off, and the most obvious, is to use pre-made models that we can bring into the software. And there are many resources available. So first off, you have the ability to import one single third-party model, for example, STLs and OBJs, and there are other ones available. And there are many websites out there that offer these file formats. Now, before you even open your software, you already have access to over 400 pieces of clip art that is included with VCarve. And with the release of version 10, you also have access to select a free design and make project too, which leads me to my last resort for quality clip art, and that is designandmake.com. So VCarve allows you to import as many V3M files as you could possibly need, and V3M is a unique Vectric Clipart. And our very own sister company, Design and Make, offers this as a file format for you to download. And so Design and Make currently has over 8,000 models to choose from. So we have a model resource, but can we alter the models at all? So we can actually look at manipulating the composite model in VCarve through a few methods, whereby we can look at altering the properties of a component for better composition, so applying tilts, blades, and deciding how components interact with other components. And then we have two level properties that will enable us to alter the models, whereby we have mirror mode and the new clipping mode. And we'll be demonstrating both of these later on. Finally, we can cleverly make use of various 2.5D toolpaths to create 3D parts and effects. So we'll be looking at fluting, moulding and V-carving. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start by looking at importing third-party data into VCarve. So we know that we're limited to one file import per session here. So we're going to demonstrate how we can bring in a simple bell model that we can then look at how we can create multiples of the single model for production. We're also going to take that same model and look at how we can create an inverted model in VCarve and the tools to do that. Finally, we'll finish off with a demonstration on how to deal with broken data. I will import a scanned model that is missing part of the model itself. And so we're going to look at ways of fixing that, making use of some of the level property tools. So let's take a look at that in the software. So let's go ahead and create a new file. So go to create a new file. Here, working with a single-sided job, we're just going to set this up 3 by 3 by 1/2 inch. And then if we come over to this section here, we want to take a look at the modeling resolution. So this is quite important when we're about to deal with 3D parts. So really and ideally, you want to have quite a high resolution here just to maximize the amount of points that are in your job space, just so you get good quality models. So here we're going to go ahead and press OK. So to import a model, we need to go into the Modeling tab. Under the 3D model tools, we're going to use this option here to import a component or a 3D model. From the project folder, I've got a STL file called the Christmas Bell. So here we could go ahead and open that up. And here you can see the bell here. We're currently in the Orientate 3D model form. And the reason for that is because we are working with third-party data. We must orient and position and size up our model before we can bring it into the software as a standard component. So here I'm actually happy with the orientation here on the top there. All I need to do is just bring that into the center of my job. So my job space is represented by this red frame here. So here we're just going to go and center the model. So let's put that in the center of our job piece. Okay, so you can see the model, part of it is actually below the 0 plane. So we need to look at adjusting that, and we can do that simply by using this slider. We'll pull that all the way down so that the entire model is above the 0 plane. I'll put that in C, and I'm happy with the size there. So we could just go ahead and press OK to import that into our session of VCarve, and the software will create a standard component. We can select it here. We can see that component here within our component tree. And so with this in place, I can simply run a 3D toolpath on that to cut out this bell, and I could turn it into, I don't know, a fridge magnet. And let's say I wanted to create a few of these for my family and friends. So let's go into the 2D view. So here is my component. So I'm going to need to look at altering the job space, as we've only got room for one bell in there. So if we go into the drawing tab, if we go over to set job dimensions and origin, Okay, so we're going to alter the width and the height. So we'll go with 5 inches for the width and then 9 inches for the height. And then we'll just simply go ahead and press OK. So you can see I've got extra room now to create or import more models here. So let's go back into the modeling tab and we're going to import that Christmas bell again, press open, and you'll see that the software is telling us that it only supports a single imported third-party model. Okay, so we know that we can only bring in one model, so we'll OK that, but let's have a look at some of the other options. Okay, so I want to create copies to cut for various friends. So I can take what we already have. If we just tile our windows here, I could press Control and drag that out to create a copy over to the right hand side, and you'll see that I now have 2 of these. Or the other option, which is probably the easiest option, and this is for pro users only, is you can take this component here and we could look at using the nesting tools. So here we have various settings whereby we can input a number of copies, however many we wanted, that is spaced out according to the tool and clearance settings and the way that we actually nest our parts. And then we could simply go ahead and press apply, and then we can preview that, and the software will basically create 6 copies of these bells, lay them out according to the settings that we've got in this form to create those copies, and we can see that they've been laid out there for us. And so now in our modeling tab we now have 6 different components like so. Another thing that we can do to really push the capabilities of what we can make with single-use imported data is make 3D parts. So I could essentially take this festive fridge and magnet and we could turn it into a hanging ornament. So let's just go ahead and we'll just undo the nesting there. And then we're just going to go over into the drawing tab, into our job space, just going to put that back to 3x3. And then here we're actually going to put this into 2.5 inch thickness, and we're going to turn this into a double-sided job. Then we could go ahead and press OK. Okay, so we've got our relief model here. And so if we go into the modeling tab, we can simply go over to the properties of this component. We can see currently it has a shape height of 0.35. What happens if we make that 1 inch? And we'll press space to accept that. And then if we just close out, we can see we've got a very nice rounded shape there. Okay, so we've essentially got half of an actual real bell. So all we have to do then is simply right click on our component and then use this option here to copy to the other side. And the software will take that and it will create a component onto the other side, which we can now view here in the 3D view because we've got multi-sided view currently switched on. Okay, so you can see that we have a nice full bell there. It's a complete circle and this works. So obviously you've got to be careful with what sort of data you are increasing the height of here, but something like this, it actually works. Not only that, with any data you can always take what you have and create a copy onto the other side to create a 2-sided part that is basically inverted and it has the same properties on both sides. Okay, so with that I've got my hanging ornament. Now what if I wanted to create more of these? Well, again, let's have a look at how we do that. So in the job setup, we're just going to alter this back to 5x9. Okay, and then we could go ahead and press OK here. And then what we could do is we could then simply go into the nesting tool. Again, this is Pro only. And we're going to select our bell. Okay, now you'll notice that in our nesting form we have this option, nest 2-sided parts. That's actually pulled out the other side as well to nest. So if I switch over, it's going to pull this part out on the bottom side because we've got nest 2-sided parts selected. Okay, so we're going to take that, and again we're going to look at applying 6 of those, so we could go ahead and preview that, and then the software will just take a moment to just collate all of the information in the nesting form with the 2-sided model, and then create the 6 parts that we need to create our complete cutouts. Okay, so there it is, so we could go ahead and press OK, and there we have 6 bells in there. Perfect, so at this stage we could then go ahead and machine that. We've got full 3D parts that would actually make nice, cute hanging decorations. Okay, so let's just put that back in C. So there we've seen how we can import just a standard single STL model, and then we looked at how we could nest it. Then we looked at this example where we can then take it and invert the model in a 2-sided job to create a full 3D part, in which we can nest again with the option to do 2-sided nesting. So now we're going to look at an example where we're going to bring in a model that is broken. So typically you kind of find this with scan data. And we're going to look at how we can fix that in the software using various level options. So what we'll do is we'll just go over and we'll go ahead and create a new file. So go to File, New, and then we can go in here and we're going to have a single-sided job and have a width of 16 inches, a height of 8 inches, and a material thickness of 2 inches. Okay, again working with a very high modeling resolution, and then we could go ahead and press OK. So let's start by going into the modeling tab where we can import that model. So here is the flourish. We'll go ahead and press open, and that will open up the Orientate 3D model form. So let's just put that in the Z view so you can see what that looks like. So here I'm just going to position that in the center of our model there. And you'll see that with that in the center, we're actually missing parts of our model sat below the 0 plane. Okay, so here we're just going to alter the 0 plane position so that we lift that up. Okay, so you can see that when we're bringing it above the 0 plane, the blue is much brighter. Where it's shaded, it's actually below. You can still see I've got parts of our model here underneath the 0 plane and there, so I need to bring this down a little bit more until it comes up completely. Okay, so I think we've pretty much got everything there. Unfortunately, we're going to have to bring in this extra part of the model that we don't particularly want, but we can look at how we can fix that in the software. Okay, so one other thing, let's just have a look at increasing the width there. So we're going to make that 7 inches, press apply, so you can see that there. And then we could discard the data below the 0 plane, so anything that beneath will not be imported into our job. So now we could go ahead and press OK. So let's have a look at what we've got here. Okay, so here is our model. So we've just got half of this. And so what we can do is we can look at using one of the level properties to create the other half of our model. So we can look at editing one side and then the software will automatically fix the other side. You can see we've got these flat areas in here that we don't want as part of our model, so we need to look at how we could remove those. Again, we could look at using one of the level properties there to do that. And then if we just take a look, let's say we look down the y-axis just to take a look at our model, we can see it's all kind of tapering up. So we need to first level that out. So we're going to start with a simple fade here. So I'm just going to tile the windows so you can see 3D view at the bottom there as well as our 2D view. We'll select our component and then we'll go into the properties here. Okay, so here we're going to look at applying a fade. So we're going to just fade down the right hand side. So we're going to start it from here And we want this component to fade down just so much so that it all becomes roughly the same height and it's not tapering upwards like it is currently. So here we'll use the set option here. So we're going to start from the left hand side, we'll just go out horizontally, click onto the right hand side, and at 50% you can see it's actually quite okay. We've actually flattened it off. So let's have a look in the Z view just to make sure we haven't lost too much detail there. We can see it, that's okay. Okay, so we can close out there. And so now we can look at mirroring our part. So to do that, what we're going to do is, just to help me out, I'm just going to pull in a guide, put that in the center of our job. Then we're going to take our component and we're just going to nudge that over so it's roughly in line with the center there. I just want to move that back ever so slightly, maybe a tad more just by using the right click button on the keyboard, and then we'll just bring that back over just so we're pretty much on the dot there. Okay, so we've got our component on the right hand side. So in order to create a copy over to the left hand side, what we could do is we could simply look at altering the property of our level. So here we could right click on our level, we can use this option here, mirror mode. What mirror mode does is it enables us to mirror our job either from left to right or right to left, top to bottom or bottom to top, or we can mirror by a quadrant, and the software will basically create the mirrored version in the 3D view as part of the composite model. We do not create any new components. This is purely just a property of the level itself and how it interacts with the actual composite model. So here I want to mirror it from right to left. So I'm going to use the right to left option. And if I just click in the space here, you can see that it's done that there. Okay, I may need to nudge the component over to the left a little. You'll see that with that I can just nudge it over and you'll see it will automatically update there in the 3D view. Okay, so you can see already that that doesn't look too bad, and so with something like this it would only really work if you're working with symmetrical items. Okay, so I like what we have there, so let's just put that back in Z. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to look at removing this unwanted part of our model here. So let's just maximize the 3D view to get a better idea of what we're talking about. Okay, so you can see when this was scanned, it's pulled in some detail that really is unnecessary. We don't want that in there. We don't want this top part here. So we need to look at removing that. And so what we could do is we could look at clipping that away. And so clipping enables us to select a vector whereby we then assign the clipping to that vector, and it will remove anything outside of the vector that we've got selected for that level. So let's have a look at how we'd do that. So if we just jump straight into the 2D view, and we're just going to zoom in on our area here. Okay, to help me draw this, I'm going to right click on our 2D grayscale. We're going to use this option here, object properties, and I'm just going to reduce the fade in just so I can see exactly where I need to draw my vector to clear away the area that I don't need. So let's use the close option here. I'm also going to switch off smart snapping. I find when I'm tracing shapes it's easy for me not to have smart snapping on in this instance. So here we'll go over to drawing, and then we'll start by drawing a polyline. Okay, so I'm just going to start here, and then here I'm literally just going to sketch my way around the lighter areas. So the lighter areas is the actual model that we want to keep. And I'm just going to click in place there. Okay, so I'm just zooming in and out just to get around the model itself. Okay, so I'm just going to keep clicking my way around over here. Okay, if I wanted to, I could even get rid of these harsh pixels that we've got on the edge there. So you and just keep going round. And we'll click that in place on that corner, and then we'll just follow this shape along over here. Okay, so I'm just going to bring that over to the center here to snap to position, right click to come out. We'll just press F just to fit that to our screen. And so now what we need to do is just look at editing the vector just to really smooth it off so that we get the best cutout possible. So to do that, let's just go into node edit mode over here, and then if we just zoom in, we can then start to just take some of those nodes, press S to smooth them out. Kind of helps at this stage because we've already drew the vector in. Maybe we take our component, right click, go to the object properties, and we're actually going to increase that fade. That way we can better see our vector and how we're editing it. Okay, so with that selected, let's press N to go back into node edit mode. Might want to delete this vector here. So just trying to create a really nice smooth vector. So we're going to just box select these and press S on the keyboard to smooth them out. Again, take those, S to smooth and S to smooth over here. Okay, you can spend as little or as long as you want on this process. At the end of the day, it's all down to the quality of the vector that you want to use to crop your component to. I want to pull that down over here. And then over here, we'll just box select those, S to smooth them out. And then over here, we move that over like so. I want to delete this node, so you can press D to delete it. Then we could just pull that handle out. Maybe we can even delete this node here, and then we'll smooth this one, and then we'll pull on this handle just to give us a really nice curve there. And then we can smooth that one, bring that down a little, smooth here, smooth over there, box select to smooth those. Then again, just working our way down, we're going to smooth over here. Want to pull that back in a little bit. We might have some flat left there, so we want to keep that away. Then over here, we'll smooth that, and we'll just pull this handle out slightly. And then we'll come over here and smooth those. S again to smooth them. So it's good to know your shortcut keys. It makes processes like this much quicker to do when you already know what they are, and it saves you the hassle of having to right click on each node and performing whichever operation it is you want on them. Okay, so we'll just bring that in like this, bring that in over there, and we don't need to do anything over here unless you just wanted to fix up these odd pixels on the edge here, but we won't go into that. I'm just pretty much showing you how to get rid of this unwanted material that we've got there. Okay, now another thing I need to do is I need to put the vector over to the halfway point so that we can join them. Okay, so one thing we can do is we can right click on this node here and use the option here to edit the polyline, in which we can continue creating our polyline there. So I've snapped to that halfway point, right click, and there we have our vector. So let's tile our windows horizontally. Okay, so we're going to remove everything outside here and outside of here. So with that vector, let's just have a look at joining that. We'll just join it with a straight line like so, and then with that vector selected, we can go over to the modeling tab, and then we can apply a clipping mode to our level, and it will take this vector that we've got selected and use that as the item to govern what is being clipped away from our component. Okay, so to do that, we simply right click and we use the clipping option. Okay, so you can see in the 3D view, it's actually removed the area we wanted either side, and it's done it really nicely actually. However, on the left hand side, we've completely lost it there. And the reason for that is because we are actually containing our clipping to this particular vector. Now, as we're working also in mirror mode, what we should do is create a copy of our vector over to the left-hand side. Even though we can't see anything in the 2D view, this vector and the clipping mode will govern what happens to the actual composite model. So we need to bear that in mind. So what we could do is just go to Edit, and we're going to undo Close Vector, and then we're going to take that vector. First off, we'll just go into the clipping mode and we're just going to undraw that. Okay, so put it back so we don't have any clipping involved at all. We've just got the mirror mode applied. Then we're going to take that vector, we're going to go into the drawing tab, we're going to use the mirror tool, we're going to flip about job center, create a mirrored copy, and we're going to flip that horizontally. Then we'll shift and select the original vector, and then we'll use the join vector tool, in which case we can then go ahead and specify a tolerance. So we'll just go with 0.004, and then we can join them, close out, and now we have one closed vector. So now if we go into the modeling tab, right click on our level and use the clipping option, and you'll see now it's clipped both sides of our composite model. And so you can see just by using mirror mode and level clipping, we've actually really transformed the broken data that we originally started out with. If we maximise a 3D view, one other thing that we could look at is the actual quality of the model itself. So you can see as this is scanned data, it kind of looks fairly raw and could do with a smooth over to maybe look at cleaning this up a little bit. So maybe let's have a look at applying a smooth filter to our model. So here we could just use the smooth filter. Okay, and so all we need to do is just increase the smoothing. Okay, so that's it actually looks okay where it is smooth. However, you can see now we're really creating a cut through the center of our part. Now you'll remember that we are actually smoothing just the one side, and it's the mirror mode that actually creates the copy over to the left hand side, and so we are going to bleed into, or at least smooth down onto the left hand side of our model, just as we do everywhere else. So there is a way that we can overcome this, so let's just undo that, and we'll just close out of the smooth components form. So one thing that I'm going to do is I'm also going to undo the join vectors, and we're just going to delete this vector. And the reason for that is I'm actually going to look at moving this over the halfway line ever so slightly. And as I'm doing it, I also need to look at bringing my vector with me as well. So we're just going to look at unchecking the clipping mode, because we're basically altering the state of this vector, so we need to reassign it afterwards. And so with that vector, we're going to hold down Shift and we're going to select our component. Then we're just going to nudge it over ever so slightly to the left hand side, and then what we could do is, if we just tile our windows, we could take a look at what we've got there, and then if we go over and smooth our part, we can see the effect of that. If we just put in the slider there, okay, so we can still see that we're still not far enough over to actually create a nice blend between the two. So if we just close out there, and then again back into the 2D grayscale, just going to nudge that over again, and then we'll go ahead and smooth that to see how that looks. And then just use a slider. Okay, so you can see we found the sweet spot there. So we've got a nice overlap, and you can see that with every move here that we're getting a nice smooth over of our model. Because the nature of what we're working with, we are working with the mirror mode itself. And so we do have these areas here where you can kind of really clearly see where the two actually meet. However, in the middle it's not too bad, but if you can see past that, it is actually not a bad model. So all we need to do now is just reassign the clipping vector. So we'll just OK that to come out, and then over here we're just going to go N for node edit. I'm just going to put that to the center there, and then over here we're also going to put that to the center, in which case we can then go ahead. Let's use the shortcut this time, so we'll use Control Shift followed by the letter H for horizontal, and then Shift and select the original vector into the drawing tab, join. We're going to join them, and then we'll select that vector into the modeling tab, right click on the level and use the clipping option, and that will clip out the areas that we don't need. And so there we have our finished fixed data here, and you can see that just by using the mirror mode and the clipping mode, we've created this full composite model. And then using the smooth tool, we've just kind of smoothed out some of the faceted areas that we had in the model. So that's it for importing STL models, but you've seen lots of different ways that we can really manipulate and really push the boundaries of what we can do to import in 3D models where we are strictly limited to the actual one standalone part. So now we're going to look at what we can do with V3M Clipart. So I mentioned earlier that with VCarve we have the ability to import an unlimited amount of Vectric V3M Clipart to create assemblies and use as part of your projects. So you'll already have access to over 400 pieces of clipart with the VCarve product, where you can take advantage of the various subjects that are available, from animals to objects to panels and ribbons, and there really is something for most projects. You can even cleverly create models just by using the dome dish selection. So you can see here I've created this very basic teddy bear face, just making use of the dish clip art that is available for us. And on top of the free clip art, you also have the ability to download V3Ms from our Design and Make clip art store. So to control the clip art we have with VCarve, we can look at the properties to manipulate the composite model. For example, we could alter the combine modes, we could add tilts and fades to get the correct heights, and then, as we saw in the previous demonstration, we can make use of the mirror and clipping modes on the levels to really transform the composite model. So using the free clip art that comes with VCarve, we're going to look at creating an interesting composition that is made up of two pieces of clip art, whereby we're going to make use of the mirror and clipping mode to create a complex looking part that you didn't have before. So let's go into the software. So we'll start by creating a new file. So here we're working with a single-sided job. We've got a width of 14 inches, height of 8 inches, material thickness is 1/2 inch. We'll set our XY datum position to be in the center of our job. This will just help us when we're coming to use the mirror options to see where the dead center of our job is, and then we could go ahead and press OK. So let's jump straight into the modeling tab. Okay, we're going to start by organising our levels. We're just going to rename this level, and we're going to call this one Central Motif. And then what we can do is we can look at bringing in the clip art for the central part of our overall composite model. So in the clip art tab, we're going to go to clip art, we're going to go to decorative, and then here I can organise it so I can see more of the clip art there. This is the one that I want to bring in, so I'm going to double click that, and that will bring that in to the centre of my job by double clicking from the clip art tab. Okay, so you can see it's been added to this level here. So here we're just going to size this. It's a little bit too big at the moment, so let's just bring that down. Okay, I might want to make that a little bit smaller. Okay, so something like that seems okay. So let's have a look at how it looks in the 3D view. So we've got the 3D view at the bottom there, and there we have it. Okay, I might want to add in a bit of a base height here just to lift this out. I know that the center part of the model is going to be the most prominent, so I want to really just bring that up before we bring further components into the composition. So here we could go to properties, and then here we're just going to apply a base height of 0.2, and then we can space to accept that, close out, and there we have our model in the center there. So now I'm ready to create the left portion of the design. Now remember, we are going to look at using mirror mode, so I needn't worry about the right hand side. I'm only going to assemble Clipart on one side of our job. So before we do that, let's right click, we'll insert a new level. We're going to rename this level, and we're actually going to call this one Central Decor. Okay, we're going to set the combine mode of that to merge so that it blends in with our current model. And then here we're going to automatically put in the mirror mode where we're mirroring from left to right. So anything that I add in to this side will be mirrored over to the right hand side. So here let's go to the Clipart tab and locate that other piece of Clipart. So here it is. So here I can drag it in over to the right. So you can see that I actually can't see anything here in the 3D view, and that's because the level we're working with is mirroring from the left to right. So if I move that over to the left, you'll see that we're now able to see that on the right hand side. Okay, so I want to take this flourish, and I actually want this part of it to actually wrap around the central motif here. So here, let's just organize that. So we're just going to take that, we're going to press H on the keyboard to flip that horizontally. Then we're just going to rotate our part like so, and then just roughly position that in place. Now, I don't want anything going higher, well, I don't at least want this part of our flourish going higher than the central part itself. So we're just going to bring that down. I may want to just rotate that again. So I'm rotating that around. You can see that with every move that I make, I am getting constant feedback in the actual composite model to how the overall part looks. Okay, I'm going to just nudge that over to the left, like so. And then what I could do is I could just move that up ever so slightly, maybe just rotate that a little bit more. So take that handle, just move that over, maybe just rotate that a little bit more, and then just nudge that down like so. Bring that back up. Okay, so I don't want too much going on at the bottom here. But what I might do is I might just go back into the flourish here and just make that a tiny little bit bigger. Okay, so something like that. And then what I could do is I could take the flourish here, maybe go over to the left a little, and then maybe just go, I think we're okay with that. Okay, so I'm happy with where we're at in terms of where this part of our flourish is sitting, but now we need to get rid of this that we don't need. So we need to look at drawing a vector. So if we go over to the drawing tab, we're just going to maximize the 2D view. Okay, so here, if we just go on to our object properties, we can see that we've got 0% fade in, which is perfect for me to sketch around so that I can see all the details that I need. And so here we're just going to use the polyline tool. So we're going to start by drawing a vector that sits in the center of our job here. And I'm just going to roughly follow along, and then we'll just jump in over here, and then we're just following the shape of the part that I need. Okay, so you can see I've gone in a little bit, but we can clean that up afterwards. And then here we're just going to take this, and we're just going to go around till we get back to the center point. Right click to come out. Okay, so let's go into node edit mode by pressing N on the keyboard. And then over here we're just going to really control the shape of that vector by altering the nodes, so turning them to smooth points. Then we can alter the span by just selecting it. We can take the handle if we wanted to. could drag that down. I want to bring this down also. Maybe just delete that span altogether and then just look at pulling on the span like so. Here, smooth those by pressing S on the keyboard. Take that handle, move that up, and then we could S to smooth that. Let me move that out a little. Bring this one in, and we'll smooth this also so we have a nice curve going through. Okay, so I think that's going to cut that quite nice. Okay, so as you've seen in the previous demonstration, we need to create a copy over onto the other side. So we're going to take that vector into the mirror tool, flip about job center, create a mirrored copy, flip horizontally, close out, shift and select the vector, then we'll join them together at this tolerance, and you'll see that we'll have one closed vector after we've joined them, which you can see there. So let's just tile our windows, and then we'll go into the modeling tab and then onto our level with our vector currently highlighted there. We can right click and use the clipping option, and you can see it's clipped away the area that I didn't need, and it's left this nice flourish in the center there. Okay, so I like what we've got there. So next up, we're going to introduce another flourish that's going to sit on the left hand side going into our central detail. So here we're going to insert a new level, rename that level, and we're just going to call this one outer flourish. We're going to set the combine mode of that to merge so it blends in with our current composite model, and then we're just going to add in a mirror mode from left to right. Okay, into the Clipart tab, we're using that same piece of Clipart. Remember, we are just using two pieces of Clipart here. Okay, so we're going to take that and we're just going to rotate it around like that. And then we're going to, let's flip that vertically so it sits like that, and then we can just rotate that around again. And then what we can do is we can just bring that in somewhere like this. So you can see how our part looks. Okay, now again we could just look at rotating that. Okay, so it's not looking too bad. It actually looks quite nice there. You might want to just bring that in ever so slightly, and you can see that it kind of blends in nice with the flourish that we chopped up over there. However, let's just see what it looks like if we try and just straighten it out a little. So we're trying to create a balance here by keeping everything kind of in line together without us creating it too top heavy, if that makes sense. Okay, so again, let's just I'll put that back in C, and then we'll just rotate it. And I might want to just pull that out and then rotate it again. And then we'll just tuck that in over here, and then maybe just nudge that up a little. Maybe rotate it. So you can see it's a very iterative process, in that we have to constantly make tweaks and adjustments until we're happy with the overall layout. Okay, so that's not too bad. However, what I might do is I might just look at fading this down, just so that we have this part sat underneath our central motif here. So to do that, if we go into the modeling tab, into our properties, we're going to use a fade here. We're going to set that from the left, going to the right, and we're going to do that. Let's try 100%. Okay, so at the 100%, it's just sat nicely underneath there. Okay, so I like how that looks. I'm happy with that. So we'll just put that back in Z. So next, what I want to do is I want to look at taking one of these swirls and adding it on the end here, just to kind of echo the curve we've got here over to the right hand side. So again, let's go ahead and create a new level. We'll rename that level. We're just going to call this one End Flourish. We'll set the combine mode of this to merge, and we'll apply the mirror mode going from left to right. Into our Clipart tab, let's just drag that flourish in place. Okay, so here, let's just go ahead and we'll just rotate that, and then we'll use V on the keyboard to flip it, and then we'll press H to flip that horizontally also. Okay, so the idea is I want that to sit on the end over here. Okay, so that's actually not too bad where it is at the moment. So what I could do, if we just double check in our 2D view. Okay, first off, what I want to do is just alter the properties here of the first one that we edited, and we'll go back to this one just so I can see a little better where we're at. Okay, so if we take that and if we just move that over to the right hand side, I might want to just move it over to the left a little. Okay, and I think something like this might be able to apply enough fade on it to just bring it down so that it's sat underneath our model that we've got here. Okay, so what we need to do now is, now I'm happy with where it's positioned, we can now think about what we're going to clip away. So we need to look at drawing a vector to remove the area that we don't need. Okay, in which case I'm actually going to put the fade of this component set to 0, like so, and then I'm just going to move that to the front. Okay, so with that I want to say move to front so I can see exactly where it overlaps. To be honest, I needn't have altered the fade because it doesn't really matter. All I'm interested in is this being in front of this component so I can see exactly where I need to draw my vector. Right then, so to do that, let's just go over into the polyline. So this one needn't be very carefully drawn. And then again, as always, as we are using the mirror tool, we must make sure that we line that up to the center, and we'll just bring that over as well, like so. We're going to shift and select those, and we're going to join them. So we're going to join like so, and then what we're going to do is we're going to Control, Shift and H to flip that horizontally. Just tile our windows there, then we'll shift and select the two vectors, and again we'll just go ahead and join them. So now we have one solid vector, which now if we go over into, she will still tile that, so that's better. So into the level, we're going to right click on the mirror mode, clipping with that vector selected, and you'll see it's removed everything there. Okay, so that's, in terms of what it's clipped away, that's perfect. However, you can see that our model is really sticking out there. So we need to look at altering the properties just to really bring that down. So if you maximize the 3D view, okay, so first off, we'll see how well we get on with just altering this component. So into the properties, and we can look at reducing that. Before we reduce it, I actually want to look at how well we can fade. So I'm going to click on this blue box here, and that will open up the properties form for the 3D view. Use the fade option, we'll set that, and we're going to set that going down, and then let's see how it looks at 100%. Okay, so that's actually not too bad. And if we just take that, and then maybe if we just decrease the height of the component, you can see it's coming through there. Maybe we could look at increasing the height of this component. So let's maybe make that 0.28. Okay, so that's lifting that up. Maybe we'll make that 0.3, so it's covering the front part. We're nearly there, so let's try 3, 4, space to enter that in. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And you can still see we're still fading underneath there, so that's not a problem. Okay, perfect. Right then, so we'll put that back in Z, and then we'll tile our windows. And so next we're going to look at the last part. Now, I feel like we're a little light over the bottom area here, so maybe we could look at adding in one of these kind of flourishes to the bottom just to kind of even it out a little. So let's close out, and as always, let's insert a new level. Right click, we're going to rename that level, and we're just going to call this one End Lower Flourish. Okay, so you can see we're being super organized here. We've got different levels, all of them have different properties associated with them. So we've got that set to merge. We're going to put that in mirror mode from left to right and into the Clipart tab, and then we'll use our trusty flourish number 73B, and then we could just go now and tweak with it the layout until we like the look of it here in the 3D view. Okay, so I'm just going to rotate that around. I'm probably going to make use of this smaller flourish here. So if we just move that over, and then if we just that over there. Okay, so I'm just really trying to position where's best for this to go without it applying too much of an interruption with a harsh line going through. So I'm just literally just moving and tweaking and rotating it around until I felt it was good and that it would be good enough to actually put through. Okay, so I think we're actually kind of okay here. So we just maybe if I shrink it a little, so if we just shrink that down and then move that in. Okay, so I think this is working out better now. So move that up to the top a little. And so it's just this area that I'm interested in, okay? So this is what I'm going to keep, and we're going to look at clipping everything else away. So to do that, again, maybe I could just move that up, maybe rotate it. Okay, we'll go with that. Right then, so let's go into just purely the drawing tab, and we'll zoom in here. So I'm only interested in this kind of area here. So in the drawing tab, we're going to draw the polyline, right click, let's just come out the polyline tool. We're going to take our component, right click, object properties, and we're just going to put that on a 0% fade so we can actually see where the curves are in this flourish. So here we're just going to start there, and we're going to come in and just follow this around like so over here, and then we're just going to meet that at the middle, and then space to just come out there, and then we're just going to follow on from the original start point, and we're just going to come on round like so into here, and then we'll just kind of just cut that in place there. And then again we need to come back over to the center there, and we'll just join those two vectors together using this join at the closest point. And then we're going to use Control Shift and H to create a copy over onto the right hand side like so, and then we're going to shift and select both of those where we can join them. Now we've got one joined vector. Right then, so let's tile our windows, and so with our vector in place, let's see how that looks when we clip it. So use a clip option, and there we have. Okay, so it's not too bad. Okay, we've got a little bit of height issue to sort out there. So let's take a look at what we can do. So maybe we could look at applying a fade. So here we're just going to go into the properties, select that component, use fade set. Let's fade that in, going this way. Okay, it's not too bad. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, so that's really brought that down. Let's just have a look at that as a whole. Okay, so it's actually okay. What I might do is I might just look at altering the height of this component here. So let's go into the properties. I might just add in a tilt. So if we use the tilt option, we're going to set that. We're going to go from here down here. So just lifting up the bottom portion just to kind of get over this area here. And then we'll just use the slider just to see how that looks. Okay, so that's actually okay. It's actually hidden that, and it hasn't cause too much trouble over into our main part. Okay, so I can see we're actually seeing a little bit of that there. So rather than clip this, maybe we could just look at increasing the height or the size of our flourish component. Okay, so only ever so slightly. Okay, perfect. Right then, so there we have our finished mantle flourish, and it's just made of 2 pieces of clip art, making use of the various mirror modes, the clipping modes, altering the properties of components, so looking at tilts and fades, altering the shape height, to create this brand new piece of art. And so you can see that there are many ways for us to manipulate 3D in VCarve. So now we're going to look, so we've finished with the kind of model side of things. Now we're going to look at how we can make use of the 2.5D toolpaths to create 3D. There are a few 2.5D toolpaths that can be used to create 3D parts or effects. So the 3 that we're going to look at now are fluting, V-carving and the molding toolpath. So the fluting toolpath machines along vectors while varying the depth of the tool, and so this toolpath is very similar to the option to profile on a selected vector, and the difference is that the toolpath at the end of each vector can be ramped to taper the cut. Now, this toolpath has been used to create standard flutes and artistic effects, and we're going to look at how we can use this to create a bowl in conjunction with the molding toolpath. We're also going to look at how we can use the VCarve toolpath to create a 3D weave effect, and then finally we'll also look at the molding toolpath. And so the molding toolpath is used to create a toolpath from a drive rail and a profile, and the result of machining the toolpath is an extrusion of the selected cross-section profile along the drive rail that you had selected. So we're going to show you moulding for part of the bowl example, as I mentioned earlier, and we'll also look at creating a panel with a model that we made earlier on in this tutorial. So let's have a look at that in the software. So we'll go and create a new file, working with a double-sided job, 25 by 25 by 1.5, set the XY date and position in the center, and we'll go ahead and press OK. So what we need to do is we need to create a series of vectors that we can use with the fluting toolpath. So here I'm just going to draw a polyline, and I'm just going to look at drawing this maybe from here down into the center there, or snap in place. Okay, so there's my vector, and now I want to create an array of copies going round the center point to create a circle shape. So to do that, we're going to use the circle array tool. We're going to put the rotation center at 0, 0, so it's rotating about the center point of our job. We're going to make 360 items, and then we're going to go ahead and press copy. Okay, so here are my vectors ready for fluting. And so that's pretty much it. So all we need to do is go over to our toolpaths tab, go straight into the fluting tool. Okay, so here we're going to have a start depth of 0, flute depth of 1.25 inch, and then we're going to use a 2-inch ball nose. Okay, so here's where we choose our flute type. Okay, so you can ramp over the complete length, ramp at the start, or ramp at the start and end. Now, as we're creating a bowl, I only want to ramp at the start, where my start points are all on the outside. So we'll be ramping in and then coming to a standard point for all the other depths of the vectors. Right, and so we're going to ramp at the start, and we're going to ramp that at around 25% in a smooth ramp. So it's just going to come in and create a nice curve for us. So here we can go ahead and press calculate. Okay, so here are all of the vectors, and then we could go ahead and preview that. And you can see out using that big ball nose, we're creating a nice smooth shape there. And so you can see we've got that ramp in, and then it's just flattening off in the center there, and that's what the bowl looks like so far. Okay, so you can see how easy it is to create 3D parts using the fluting toolpath. Now we're going to switch over to the bottom side and we're going to look at using the moulding toolpath to create the underside of our bowl. So let's close out there. So for the moulding toolpath we need a cross section for the actual profile shape and a rail for it to follow along. So we're going to draw a circle, so we're just going to start out from the centre there. We're roughly just going to get the same shape as the lines that we created earlier. Yeah, we accidentally created a second vector there, so I'm going to take that. I'm actually just going to shrink this down a little using shift. Okay, so that's okay. And then, so that's our drive rail. So now we need to attach a cross section or a profile that we want to sweep around the out or extrude around the outside of that vector. So I find it easy to draw a rectangle to begin with. So here we're just going to put in a width of 1 inch and a height of 1.5 inches, so 1.5. And then we'll just put that in there like so. And then we're just going to node edit where we can really just transform the shape here. Okay, so I don't need these vectors. I don't even need this point here. So I'm going to delete it. I'm going to right click. We can turn this into a Bezier span. And then here we can look at altering the handles like so. If I wanted to keep my control handle aligned with my main node or point, select them and then press Y. Okay, same as this one, so select the one you want to align to first, so this bottom one here, and then we're going to shift and select this one. I'm going to press X, and then here we can just pull on the handle to really alter the curvature there. Okay, so something like that is okay. So then we can switch over to the Toolpaths tab, and then we're going to go into the moulding toolpath. So we're going to select our vector for our rail, shift and select the vector for our cross section. Okay, and then we're going to also look at reversing this direction, so starting from this point going out, and then we can simply enter a tool. So we're going to have an 1/8 inch ball nose as our finishing tool, and we're going to clear that with a 1/4 inch end mill. I have a machine allowance of 0.03, just so it leaves a little bit there for the finish tool to cut at. And then we're going to use the automatic boundary offset here so that it can come off. And then we can go ahead and press calculate. And we can first look at the clear tool, we can preview that, perfect. And then we can take a look at the finish tool, see how that looks. Delete the waste material, and you can see we've got a nice curved edge. And then if we flip that over, we can see we've got our complete bowl. So we've got a nice 3D part there, just made from the fluting and the moulding toolpath. So now we're going to look at a VCarving example. Okay, so here I have a file. Okay, we've just got a bitmap in here, that's all we've got. We're going to look at tracing this weave, which will then look at VCarving the weave. Now the beauty of the VCarve toolpath is that if we can get a nice trace of this, it will machine deeper into these square areas and shallower into the thinner areas, as that's how the VCarve toolpath works. And so hopefully we could create a weave effect just from the VCarve toolpath. So with this bitmap selected, let's go over to the bitmap trace tool. We're going to use the colour option here. Okay, so we're going to select how many colours we want to fit vectors to. You'll see that every time I click on a colour, you'll see that more red is showing, as that's my trace colour. Okay, so just go in there, and I think that's okay. So that's pretty much all the areas that I would like to machine away. We'll do that at a loose corner fit where we're maximising the noise filter, and then we could go ahead and preview that, press apply, close out, and there is our vector. So then what we can do is we could look at VCarving this. Before we do that, I'm just going to add in one more vector as our cutout pass. So here we're going to go into the Clipart tab, into Clipart, we're going to go to 2D vectors. I'm sure I have a nice heart here, so we can double click that so you can see that there. Right then, let's switch over to the Toolpaths tab. We're going to take our vectors into the VCarve toolpath. Start depth is at 0. We're going to work with a 90 degree 1/2 inch V bit, press calculate, and that's simply it. So let's have a look. So we can see straight away that we're going to be cutting deeper into those corners, and so we should create a kind of 3D effect. So if we go ahead and preview that toolpath, you can see what that looks like. So you can see we've cut deeper in those corners, and it has given us this kind of 3D effect just from using a set of vectors and the VCarve toolpath. So to finish that, you could simply go into the 2D view. We can take that vector there and we'll run a profile pass to cut that out. So we'll just put Z equals for the cut depth using a 1/4 inch end mill on the outside. Go ahead and profile that, and then we can preview it to see what it looks like. And there we have our finished heart. Let's just undraw the origin there. And you can see we've got a nice kind of effect there from that weave pattern. So now we're going to move on and look at an example that we worked on earlier. So we're looking back at the broken data example, that STL that we brought in, where we fixed the area that we didn't need using the clipping option, along with the mirror tool to create the full 3D part where we gave it a final smooth over. So now we're going to look at combining this with 2.5D toolpaths. We're going to create a panel, it could be like a draw panel or something, using the molding toolpath. Okay, so first off, we're going to look at drawing a rectangle. So we're going to go with a width of 16 and a height of 8. We'll go ahead and create that, and then we'll just select it and then just press F9 to put that in the center of our job. So now we've got our vector that represents the drive rail for our molding toolpath. Now we need to bring in a cross section or a profile shape to be extruded along that vector. So with the release of 10, if you go into your Clipart tab, if you've downloaded the Clipart that is, you'll notice that we've added a few extra folders. So we've got game layouts, so these are all 2D vectors. We've got rotary profiles, so you can use these with the molding toolpath to create decorative rotary parts. And we've got various other items like stylized words, but here we've got molding profiles. So you can see we've got a selection of 10 generic profiles, and here we're going to look at this one here. So I'm just going to bring that in, and we can zoom in and we can see the shape of that there. Okay, so we're going to use that with the molding toolpath to go ahead and create our part. So for the molding toolpath, I don't need this leg here, so I'm just going to go into node edit, we're going to right click, and we're going to delete that span there. Right then, let's go over to the toolpaths tab. So we're going to go into the material setup. We've got a thickness of 1.5 inches. I can see my model thickness is 0.4, so I'm going to leave a gap above of 0.1 in there, and we've got a gap below of 1 inch, which is perfect as the height of my moulding is actually 1 inch also. Right then, so we'll go ahead and press OK. So we're going to start by creating the molding toolpath. So we're going to select our rail first, which is this vector here, shift and select our drive rail, our cross section, and then we've got everything set up there. Right then, I'm going to push the model, the toolpath position right to the bottom of our job. So remember, in the material setup form, we said that we're going to have a gap above of 0.1. We've got the model, which is at 0.4, and then we've got our moulding, which is 1 inch. Okay, so we're going to push that all the way to the bottom there. We're going to cut this in 2 operations. So we're going to use a larger area tool to clear everything out to begin with. So we're going to use a 1/4 inch end mill. Then we're going to finish that off by using a ball nose, an 1/8 inch ball nose there to get in at all the curvature detail. Okay, we'll have a machine allowance of 0.03. We're going to create the sharp corners, so it creates the corners for our panel. And then we could go ahead and press calculate. Okay, so let's just go ahead and preview that toolpath to see how that looks. Okay, so I've accidentally previewed the finished one there. So if we just undo that and then preview the clear tool to begin with, so you can see how that looks. And then we'll go in afterwards with that smaller tool to create that finish toolpath. Okay, so there it is. Okay, we can double click on the waste material to just get rid of that. Right then, so next up we need to think about how we're going to cut our decorative part out. So here we're actually going to look at using a pocket toolpath. So if we close out and go into the pocket toolpath, so we're going to pocket between this vector here and the vector that represents the outline of our model. We're going to cut down at a depth of 0.5, so that takes us up to the bottom of the model there, using a 1/4 inch end mill. We could go ahead and calculate that. Okay, so it's telling us that there are some vectors here, so let's just cancel that and just see what we've got here. So if we go over and then we'll just join those vectors, going in like that. Okay, so now if we try it. Okay, so there we go, just needed a simple join. There must have been one that got loose somewhere. And then we could go ahead and preview that. Perfect, so there we have pretty much cut out, and all we've just got left is the finish for the main decorative part of our panel, in which case we'll go into and do a straight 3D finish. Okay, we're going to use the selected vector, in which case we're just going to select this vector here. We'll have an offset here of 0.01 there, using the 1/8 inch ball nose, and we'll go ahead and calculate that. And then we can preview that to see how that part looks. Excellent. Okay, so there we have a combination of 2.5D toolpath with 3D machining to create the panel that you can see here. Okay, so that's pretty much that. Now, one other thing to think about, remember when you import an STL, you can only import one at a time per session. Now, what if I wanted to cut 4 of these panels? Well, we could do that by looking at the array copy toolpath. So this is a pro only feature. So if I went over to my job setup, and then if we just alter the height so that we are working with a height of, let's say, 48 inches, then we could go ahead and press OK. Okay, and then if we just took everything and then just positioned it down at the bottom here, like so. So you'll notice that the components disappeared, and that's because we've moved the clipping vector. So if we just uncheck the clipping option and select the vector that we need and then put clipping on again, you'll see that that has now worked. Right then, so we're just going to come over here and we're just going to recalculate our toolpaths. Okay, so successfully recalculated everything. So let's just go ahead and just preview all of those toolpaths there. Okay, perfect, so there it is. So now, as I mentioned, if I wanted to take all of these and create an array of them, I can do by looking at using the array copy toolpath. Okay, so here I can select all of the vectors, and let's say we just want 3 extra in Y, not 31, and then we'll go with a gap of, let's say, 0.5 of an inch, and go ahead and press calculate. You see that the software will do that for me, and obviously we can create more copies if we wanted, and then we could go ahead now and preview all of the toolpaths, and we can see how the part looks there. And so this is another way of combating multi-machining when you're working with STL, single STL data. Okay, so that's that example there. Okay, so let's just close out there, and we're just going to undo the array copy toolpath. We're going to undo the move, and then we're going to look at just bringing that back to the original job dimensions. So here is 20 by 11 in this case, and we'll go ahead and press OK. OK that, and then we can go into the modeling tab. Let's just uncheck the clipping level, and then we're just going to right click and then use the clipping option there, okay, just to reset that. And then what we can do then is just go ahead and recalculate the toolpaths if we wanted to, but in this case we don't. Now we're going to look at what we can do in terms of other things using the same set of vectors. And we're going to look at actually creating a chocolate mould, so it's the reverse of the panel that we just made. And so to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the modelling tab. We're going to insert a new level. We're going to add in a 0 plane, and then for the flourish we're going to go to the combine mode and we're going to set that to subtract. Okay, so it's subtracting there. Right then, so that's pretty much it in terms of the components set up. So now we can just think purely about the toolpaths. So now we're doing this in reverse. What we need to do is set our model position. Okay, so this time what we want to do is we want to have a gap below of 0.1. So we're pushing that model all the way to the bottom of our material block, and then we could go ahead and press OK. Okay, so we're not going to recalculate the toolpaths because we do need to make a few edits to them. For example, in the moulding toolpath, if we just double click to go in there, what we need to do is we need to reverse the direction of our drive rail. So we're going to reverse the direction so it's cutting down into this shape. We also need to look at reversing the toolpath position, so we're going to push that all the way to the top this time. We're going to go with the same tools, same settings, and then we'll go ahead and press calculate, and then we can preview that clear toolpath. Okay, so you can see it's coming down inside this time, and then we can take that swept profile. Okay, so you can see that there, and now we can move on to the pocket toolpath. So the pocket toolpath in this case, we're actually going to cut down to 0.1. Okay, so remember we're reversing it, so we're cutting deeper this time, so we're cutting right before the actual model itself. But this time we don't need this vector here, we're just going to pocket the whole part out. Then we could go ahead and calculate that, and we can preview it to see how that looks. Okay, so it's clearing that away, and then finally we can go into the 3D finish, where this time we're going to use this selected level. We're going to use level 1, so it's just going to take the boundary of our flourish and it's not going to include that 0 plane. I'm going to put in an offset of 0, working with a negative shape, so we don't need an offset there. Then we could simply go ahead and calculate that, and the software will work that out for us, and then we can preview that to see how that looks, and there we have a chocolate mould. Okay, so it's just the reverse there. And so throughout this presentation, you've seen that VCarve is a very powerful program, and that there are many ways to create 3D in the software through Vectric Clipart. So we started off by looking at importing a single STL, where we looked at ways that we could manipulate the model using the mirror mode, the clipping mode. We looked at inverting imported models using two-sided machining, and ways that we can create multiple parts by using the nesting tool. We also showed an example where we make use of the Vectric Clipart, remembering that you can import an unlimited amount of V3Ms into your VCarve session, and then using the mirror, clip and various other property tools for the actual components themselves, we created brand new clipart. And then lastly, you saw there how we can be very clever and use 2.5D toolpaths to create various 3D shapes. So we looked at using the fluting and the moulding toolpath to create the bowl, V-carving, a weave shape, and then the moulding toolpath to include the 3D that we created earlier. So it's a combination of all three. So the 3D STL import with the moulding toolpath to create a panel, We then showed you how you can use the array copy toolpath to create multiple parts, finished assembled parts to machine, as well as then reversing that to show how you could then turn that into a mould. And so that completes this presentation. Thank you for watching. There we go, I've got the mic on. That was the end of the presentation. So there's a lot there to take in. So we've looked at how we could use 3D data, whether that's third-party STL models, to all of the clip art that you have included in VCarve, and looking at the different ways that you can create assemblies as well. And then looking at the toolpath side of things, so some interesting techniques there, looking at how we can use the fluting toolpath to create part of that bowl, the moulding toolpath for the bottom side of the bowl, along with the VCarve toolpath to create that kind of faux weave effect, and then how we can then use them, a combination of the moulding toolpath with 3D toolpaths to create moulds and plaques. So thank you so much for joining us today. To have a look at any of the projects that are included in this presentation, there is a link to this video, and you can go and head over to your V&Co account to download them from there. So please let us know if you're enjoying these videos. We'd like to hear your feedback, so give us a thumbs up if you like the video, subscribe to hear the latest updates on some of the videos that we'll be releasing. So I'm going to leave you there. So next week Todd is going to be in the hot seat, and he is going to be with you at an earlier time of 3 p.m, so that's British summertime. We'll post that out socially. So we'll catch you then. So thank you for joining us. Happy making and stay safe.